In this video, I am going to do function composition. Find f composed with g and g composed with f. Given that f of x is equal to 3x squared plus 5 and g of x is equal to square root of x plus 4. Remember the definition of function composition. So f composed with g of x, by definition it is f of g of x. Now what is my g of x? We need to look at that. F of g of x. My g of x is square root of x plus 4. So I am going to put square root of x plus 4. Then what does f do to its input? So now let's look at f. So this whole thing is an input to the function f. So f has an input square root of x plus 4. Now in the original definition of the function, it takes the input x, squares it, multiplies it by 3 and adds 5 to it. Now just because I change the input, it shouldn't change the behavior of the function. Okay, so now it's going to take the input, it's going to square it, multiply it by 3 and add 5 to it. So let's go ahead and do that. It's going to take the input square root of x plus 4, is going to square it, then multiply it by 3 and add 5 to it. Now please note, square and square root are going to cancel. That's going to give you 3 times x plus 4, then add 5 to it, this 5. So if you simplify it further, it's going to be 3 times x is 3x and 3 times 4 is 12. 3 times 4, then plus 5, which is going to give you 3x plus 17. So f composed with g of x is going to be 3x plus 17. That's one answer. Now the other one, g composed with f of x. So let's do g composed with f of x. G composed with f of x is equal to, by definition, g of f of x, right? G of f of x. Now let's look at it. G of f of x. What is f of x? F of x is 3x squared plus 5. So it's going to take 3x squared plus 5. So it's taking as input, g is taking as input, instead of x, is taking 3x squared plus 5. Remember, try to think of function argument as an input. That means that's whatever is inside this parenthesis, it's an input to the function. What it does to the input, the function adds 4 to the input and takes a square root of it. It's going to do the exact same thing here. It's going to add 4 to the input and then take square root of it. So what is the input? Input is 3x squared plus 5. That's the input. Adds 4 to it and takes a square root of it. Now you can just simplify it. It's going to be square root of 3x squared plus 9, and that's what it is. So g composed with f of x is square root of 3x squared plus 9. So that's your second answer. Now let me give you sort of a visual representation of what I did here. So okay, so you have one function f, let's call it, the other function g, and then I'm going to create another box here. This time this is g and this is f. So this function f taking an input x is going to give out f of x. That's an output for this function. Now whatever is output for this function, which is f of x, goes as an input to the next function and it gives out g of f of x. G of f of x. So this, by the way, is g composed with f of x. This is this one, g composed with second f of x. Now let's go ahead and look at this guy. You give it an input x, is going to give you an output g of x, right? Whatever is output of this function, which is g of x, goes as an input to the next function f. It gives you out f of, by the way, g of x. So this is f composed with g of x, which, by the way, is this function. Now you get the visual illustration of this composition, and this is the mathematical illustration of this composition, and I think it would be good for you to understand both views. This actually helps you see what's happening physically, and this helps you see what's happening mathematically. I hope that this discussion was helpful. Thank you very much.